In healthcare, capital isn't just about spending money. It's about investing it wisely. But what if that investment is just leaking away through all these tiny cracks in your operations? Today, we're looking at what's called the architecture of capital efficiency. Basically, a blueprint for making sure every single dollar is put to its most powerful use. Now, take a look at this. This might just look like a messy records room, right? But it's actually a perfect symbol for a way bigger problem. Think about it. Every single misplaced file, every clunky, outdated process, every moment someone spends searching for something instead of helping a patient, that's all just fuel for a fire that's absolutely torching your capital. So you really have to ask yourself this question, because this kind of financial bleed, it's not some loud, dramatic emergency. Nope. It's this quiet, steady drain that's happening day in and day out. And this brings us to a really massive issue for the entire industry. We're not just talking about some minor rounding errors in the budget here. We are talking about systemic problems, inefficiencies that have a billion-dollar price tag, and that's globally. So where does this drain usually come from? Well, it's typically a mix of three things. You've got clinical processes that are stuck in the past, you've got expansion plans that are just made up as you go along, and of course, a bunch of different tech systems that refuse to talk to each other. You put those three together and boom, you've got the perfect storm for wasting a ton of money. But what if you could stop the bleed? What if you could bring in someone like an architect to completely redesign the very foundation of your operations, for financial strength? Well, that's exactly where a company like Taurus Global comes into the picture. They're a great case study for this kind of architectural approach. And this quote right here, it perfectly sums up their whole philosophy. The idea is that you can't just go out and buy some generic software package and expect it to magically fix the unique, super complex challenges that a hospital or a growing clinic chain faces. It just doesn't work that way. You need something tailored. So here's how to think about Taurus Global, or TG for short. Think of them less like consultants and more like actual architects. See, they don't just show up and give you a binder full of advice. They design a custom blueprint for your entire system, making sure every single piece, from the tech to the clinical workflow, is built from the ground up for maximum efficiency and, of course, return on investment. And their approach? It's not guesswork. It's this really disciplined three-step process. First, they do a super deep assessment to figure out what's really going on. Then they create joint teams to oversee the whole execution. And the whole thing is guided by experts who get both sides of the coin, the clinical side and the tech side. Okay, so they have this methodical approach, but what's cool is how they customize it for different kinds of clients. Because, let's be real, the challenges a huge hospital faces are totally different from a clinic that's trying to scale up fast, or from a private equity firm looking at an investment. All right, so for the big hospitals, the biggest financial leaks, they often come from just unplanned growth. You know the story. A new wing gets built, shiny new equipment is bought, but if there's no master plan holding it all together, it just adds layers of complexity and cost. TG comes in to create that master plan and basically re-engineer those core processes. And the results? How about this? $27 million. That's a real number. That's how much was saved for one client, and it was a direct result of swapping out that chaotic ad hoc planning for a strategic architectural blueprint. Now, for clinic chains, it's a whole different ballgame. It's all about speed and scale, right? How in the world do you grow from just one location to 100 without creating this massive IT nightmare, with a bunch of systems that don't talk to each other and end up crippling your efficiency right when you need it most? So TG's answer to this is a growth model. They help build an IT roadmap right from the get-go, they help pick the right tech vendors so you don't overspend, and they standardize your operations. What you end up with is a model for growth that's repeatable and super efficient. And what about the investors who are putting up the cash for all this growth? Well, for them, TG acts as what they call a force multiplier. Basically, they provide that expert third-party stamp of approval on the strategy, the design, the financials, before millions of dollars are actually spent. It's all about protecting that capital. And here's a perfect example of that in action. There was a $7 million investment that was literally about to go up in smoke because of some misaligned tech projects. TG came in, validated the plan, and stopped it from becoming a total write-off. I mean, that is the definition of protecting investor capital. Okay, so talk is one thing, but seeing the transformation with your own eyes, that's something else entirely. Let's take a look at the before and after of what this architectural approach actually looks like on the ground. So, on the left, you see a doctor's handwritten notes. We've all seen them, right? Hard to read, impossible to search, and a huge risk for errors. And on the right, that's the result of Chi-Ji's work. It's clear, structured data right there on the screen. This is a massive leap from ambiguity to precision. You're getting instant insights for better patient care. And here, this is where we see that cash bonfire finally being put out. That chaotic room full of paper transforms into a modern data command center. And look, this isn't just about neat storage. It's about control, it's about security, and it's about turning your data from a headache into a real strategic asset. So it's really crucial to get this. This kind of transformation isn't just about installing some new software. It's about building a complete digital ecosystem where the technology, the processes, and the people all work together in perfect harmony. And a huge piece of that ecosystem puzzle is navigating the absolute maze of regulations out there. This means you need deep expertise in things like data privacy laws, like India's DPDP Act, and you have to meet tough quality standards from national bodies like NAB or even global ones like JCI. Plus, you've got to align with national digital health frameworks like ABDM. This stuff isn't just a nice to have. Getting it wrong can lead to massive penalties. But what's really interesting is that this strategic approach can go beyond just saving money. It can actually start generating new revenue. For example, you can take a standard hospital radiology department, which is usually just a cost center, and with the right architecture, turn it into a teleradiology hub that's commercially viable. It becomes its own profit-generating business. So when you step back and look at the big picture, what we're really talking about here is a fundamental shift, a completely new way of thinking about healthcare operations and finance. And the contrast couldn't be clearer. The old way is all fragmented and reactive. You're constantly putting out fires, which is always costly. But this new strategic way, it's planned, it's proactive, and it's incredibly efficient. You're replacing all those siloed systems that don't communicate with one seamless, integrated ecosystem. All of which leaves us with one final and I think pretty critical question to ask yourself. Is your healthcare organization built for the future? Or is it still running on an outdated model, just hoping for the best? Because the alternative is to build on a solid architectural foundation, one that's designed for efficiency, for growth, and for whatever comes next in healthcare.